Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Sandra Lake. I'm the current president of the Ingham County Bar Association. And this is the ICBA Keeping the Bench and Bar Together. Tonight, we have the pleasure of speaking with the Honorable Joyce Draganchuk. I'm going to give just a short introduction about her because one of my first questions is going to be for her to share her background with us. But as you all know, she is a circuit court judge in the 30th Circuit Court. She was elected in 2004 and then re-elected again in 2010 and 2016. She is the presiding judge of the General Trial Division Business Court, and she's a business court judge. For those who don't know, Judge Draganchuk has been just an amazing supporter of the ICBA, but it doesn't end there. There's so many organizations that she supports. I know just being a part of the Women Lawyers Association, how much she gives to that organization. She has been for the last several years the president of the MSU Inns of Court. She was just telling me about how one of their goals there is to mentor young lawyers, which I think is just fantastic. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. But we appreciate you being with us, Judge Draganchuk, tonight. So we're going to start off. I'm going to ask her a few questions, a few serious questions, a few fun questions. And then the idea tonight is that we just have a casual conversation. You can pop in and ask questions once we open it up. Or just sit and listen and learn. I have to announce for the video that I told Judge Draganchuk that this is a casual event and that beverages are absolutely fine. So we are taking in our beverages. We want this to be just a fun and casual conversation, but one where we can all connect in ways that we're just not able to do so anymore. So let me start off with a serious question. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your legal background?
Well, if I start by talking about high school, are you all going to disconnect thinking this is going to be a really long story? I promise you it won't, but I can't start with a description of my legal career without starting in high school. So we had to sign up to get a job in the afternoon, go to school in the morning. And one night I signed up for it. My teacher called me and he said, "We have a great job. It's the best one we've ever offered, but a couple of girls have already turned it down because it's working in downtown Detroit and their parents won't let them go to downtown Detroit." And he said, would your parents let you do that? And I said, absolutely, yes, I'll take it. Of course, I never asked my parents. And so I worked for this law firm in downtown Detroit, Friedman, Myers and Keys. This was in the 70s, the mid 70s or the early 70s. And I went to school in the morning and worked in the afternoon. And I loved it. It was like maybe 8 attorneys, and they treated me like a part of their family, and they taught me everything in the office. I did everything from updating the law books, the firm banking, delivering things to other law firms, delivering judges' copies to the judicial chambers in the Wayne County Circuit Court. And I just loved it. And I learned something new every single day. We had an old-fashioned switchboard with the cords like Lily Tomlin on Laugh-In. And I learned how to operate that. There was nothing I didn't enjoy learning new in that place. And so when it came time to graduate from high school, I had no desire to go to college, and I stayed and worked for the firm full time. And I did less running then and became more of like a full-time legal secretary. So I went on, I worked for some other firms. I was, living on my own, supporting myself. And one day, 6-7 years later, I'm working for this firm, and an attorney said to me, "You know what, you're really smart. You should go to law school." And I said, "Law school? I haven't even gone to college." And he said, "Well, you should go to college and then go to law school." And I said, "I can't. I live alone. I support myself. How would I ever afford it?" And he said, "Get a student loan." And I said, believe it or not, "What's a student loan?" And so tens of thousands of dollars in debt later, I had quit my job and I was living off student loans, and I quickly zoomed through undergrad as fast as I could and went on to Wayne State Law School. So after law school, I went to the Court of Appeals, and I was a pre-hearing attorney for a year. And then I was selected to clerk for Judge Danhoff, who was the chief judge at the time. He's deceased now. But I was Judge Danhoff's law clerk then for a year. And I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor, and when a position opened up at the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, I applied for it. I didn't even get an interview, and I was devastated. And it was someone at the Court of Appeals who said to me, you got to fight for this if you want it. So I marched over to the prosecutor's office. Don Martin was the prosecutor at the time, and I handed them a letter saying, you've really screwed up not interviewing me. And it wasn't his decision, it was HR. I had put down too high of a starting salary on my application. So Don Martin called me in that afternoon and talked to me, and called me about an hour later and offered me the job. And that started one of the greatest jobs of my entire life as an assistant prosecutor. And then I ended up the last 4 years of the 17 I was there as the chief assistant prosecutor. And one day someone said to me, "You're going to run for circuit judge." And I said, "No, you're crazy." And they said, "No, you are. And we're going to help you. Just do what we say and it'll work. Work the formula." That's what they always told me, work the formula. So I worked the formula and got elected in 2004. And that is a summary of my legal background. That wasn't so bad, was it?
No, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
I still have attorneys that appear in front of me from the Detroit area. And then, of course, they don't know me, but I worked for their firm at one time and as a secretary. And it's sort of funny because, I know things about them.
You know who was naughty and who was nice.
I know who was naughty and who was nice. And of course, it makes zero difference to me in my current position, but it is interesting, and it does go to show you how, you cultivate a reputation, and, what you do matters. And, is the attorney standing in front of me arguing, I'm thinking things to myself like, are you still fill in the blank? Yeah, it's real interesting.
So I have a few more lighthearted questions for you. If you could do anything other than the practice of law right now, what would you do?
Well, I have 3 options. So the first one is without regard to talent. If we could do this without regard to if we could choose without regard to our abilities, I would like to be an entertainer. I mean, ever since I was a child, my dad would always say, she's such a card. She's always putting on a show. Was always singing and dancing, and so entertainer, but okay, zippo talent. So then my next one is addictions counselor, but I really think that would be emotionally draining. And after 16 years of this emotionally draining job, I don't think I would go for addictions counselor. So then we get to the realistic one. Mind you, I'm in my 60s, so I'm thinking more in terms of retirement job. I'd like to be a checker at Meijer. I love food. I love shopping. I think it would be fun to see all the different things people were buying. And I'd be like, "Oh, where'd you get that? That looks good. Have you ever tried it?" That's what I would like to do.
And you know everything that's on sale that week.
Absolutely. Good point.
If you could travel anywhere in the world, assuming that COVID didn't exist and there weren't all these restrictions, where would it be?
Well, my husband John and I really do love to travel, and we've traveled a lot. We've gone to New Zealand, Australia, a number of trips to Europe. We've had a lot of really good adventures, but we are coming up. Let's see, it's 2022 or 23. I can't remember. We're coming up on our 30th anniversary. And my husband is Ukrainian. That's the name. Draganchuk is Ukrainian. And he was born in Germany. His family fled Ukraine right at the end of World War II. They were Catholic, and they were subject to religious persecution. And as a matter of fact, I had an attorney in front of me once. We were in chambers, and she was had a Russian accent, and I asked her, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Siberia." And I said, "Oh, my husband's people are from Siberia too." And I said, although involuntarily, because literally he has relatives that were in Siberia, imprisoned because of religious persecution. So they fled Ukraine at the end of World War II, and my husband was born in a labor camp in Germany. And so to answer your question, even though we've been to a lot of really cool places, and he has gone to Ukraine, but I haven't, I want to take this Viking river cruise for our 30th that goes down this river that runs through Ukraine. And he was really big on it when I first mentioned it to him. And now he sort of has cooled off about it. So I'm not sure if we're going to do it, but that's the reason why. And that is the trip that I really want to take.
And one more sort of lighthearted question. Do you have any pets or hobbies that you'd like to share with us?
I have no pets. I cannot be responsible for any other living thing. And we do travel a lot. And so pets have always been just really unrealistic. I have a lot of hobbies. Actually, when I was in my last year of college, I took one of those tests where you answer all these questions, and then they put it into a computer, and it spits out what you should be when you grow up. So I'm in my last semester, and I was already admitted to law school. I think my dad had paid my first semester's tuition. I mean, it was a commitment. It was done, and I was excited about it. But I took one of those tests regardless, and it spit out that I should be a homemaker. Well, it was funny, but not terribly surprising, because I love to cook. I love to quilt. I don't do like traditional quilts. I'm really leaning more towards like art quilts. I love fabric. It's like painting with fabric and other items. And I knit and I sew. And I don't do a lot of, like, I used to do garment construction years and years ago, but now I sew more out of necessity. So I will buy like a super expensive suit, and 5 minutes after I get it home, I'll have the sleeve completely deconstructed, and I'm shortening it. So I'm a pretty decent seamstress.
So now I've got a few more serious questions, court related. So I know in our other discussions with other judges, this has probably come up, but I think that even if we got a weekly update, it would be wonderful, because COVID situation is so fluid. But where are we at in terms of what you know of reopening the Ingham County Circuit Court, and when that happens, what do you think that that's going to look like?
Well, people say we're shut down or we're closed, and I sort of resist that. I mean, I think we're open. We've never been shut down. We perform essential services, remember. So members of the public do need to come into the building. The family court has diligently performed things like PPOs and all the other essentials that are needed in family court. And of course, criminal has essential functions, and civil does too, for that matter. So I've never considered us shut down. But of course, what we are is adjusting how we operate. And as you probably know, that we have to go with the state court administrative office. There are phases of reopening, and we were most recently for quite some time at phase 2, and we were almost ready to reach phase 3, which really changes what we can do. And it meant we would be able to have jury trials again. And then of course, this big spike happened in Michigan, and now we've actually been moved back to phase 1. You probably know that, but phase 1 does really preclude jury trials. And it also requires no in-person things unless it's constitutionally required or an emergency. So that really does change things. But I hope that we'll move towards phase 2 again if the metrics are right. They've got to be right for a 2-week period before we ask permission to move up. So if we get back to phase 2, then we have to be in phase 2 for another 2-week period and have a downward trend and meet all the right metrics before we can ask them to move to phase 3. But again, that doesn't mean that we're not having hearings or not functioning. It just requires us to do things remotely when at all possible. And what will it look like? Well, way back last summer, a lot of us had our courtrooms changed around. Mine was gutted. Since last summer, there have been no benches left in my courtroom. There's just 14 juror chairs spaced throughout the courtroom, and then counsel tables. And so when we do get to the point, if we get to phase 3, when we get to phase 3, I'm ready to start jury trials the minute we hit phase 3, and we don't have to ask permission for a jury trial once we hit phase 3. So, most of us are ready to be up and running when that happens.
Can you give us any sense of, once we get back to jury trials, what kind of delay there's going to be for civil cases, given that there's a backlog of criminal cases that will go first?
That's a good question. And on this, I can only speak for myself. I don't know what the other judges are intending, but I've already told some of my business court attorneys. And right now, I think I've worked through all my non-business court cases. They've all been disposed. I believe my civil docket is composed entirely of business court. And I've already told them, look, you're going to get notices from our assignment clerk, whatever you call him, still that, give you a jury trial date. And obviously a lot of business court cases are not even jury trials. So there's only a small handful. They're bench trials, but you're going to get jury trial notices and everything as if everything is normal. But the honest truth is, I've got people sitting in jail, and I'm going to prioritize my criminal. Now, my criminal docket's not way, way, way out of control. My prosecutor who's assigned to me and I have worked really, really hard, just hounding people, come in for a pretrial or show up on Zoom for a pretrial. Tell me the status of the case. Why can't you plead now? You're going to, so do it now. And we've really stayed on top of it. So I'm not really terribly in a hole on criminal cases, but of course there are some, and I'm going to work through those first. And I'm actually scheduling on top of my civil docket. So although civil attorneys may get a notice of a jury trial, and if it's for me, I don't plan on it. Like, let's just say best case scenario right now, our jury trials are suspended till May 17th. If we had 2 weeks of downward trends that were drastic downward to allow us to move to phase 2, and then another 2 weeks of drastic downward that allowed us to move to phase 3, then I could start criminal trials on May 17th. Now that's very optimistic and probably not going to happen. But if we did, I think you'd have to give me till. Did I freeze?
You did for just a minute. Sorry. You were saying optimistically we would have to give you until.
Okay. Oh, okay. So if I could start my criminal jury trials in May, I'm going to book them straight through and get as many done as I can. And I think the earliest would be fall, where I could fit in a civil jury trial. I can do a bench trial anytime you want.
I think that's great for us to know, because from the civil practitioner side of things, we're just terrified because we have experts who, book time off their calendars for trials. And so we're all trying to scramble to make sure that we're not wasting their time. So that's helpful to know. But obviously, we also know that as soon as we can get back going, that you guys are going to be doing that. The last question that I have for you before we open it up to everybody else is, we had a short discussion before we went on today about YouTube. And I learned some things that I didn't know about your court, your accessibility to YouTube, and then how some of your YouTube hearings are maybe affecting law nationwide. And so maybe you could tell everybody about that a little bit.
Yeah, since we started back in March of last year, doing everything we could on Zoom, the Supreme Court told us, of course, that in order to have courtrooms open to the public, they suggested that we live stream our hearings on YouTube. Now, not all the judges wanted to do that, and that's fine, but I thought that was a fine solution. I do not go with the solution of letting everybody have your Zoom meeting room number and letting members of the public just join into your Zoom hearing. Because to me, and everybody's different, I understand other judges don't feel this way, but to me, it's like you should only have the participants in your Zoom hearing. Otherwise, you could have troubles. And I think we all know what some of those might be. But so I don't allow that. I only allow attorneys, clients, the people who are the participants of that hearing to Zoom in. So anyway, I live stream on YouTube, and I save them. And I love it. I think that the bright side of all of this is that never have courts been more accessible to the public, because people who would never come down to the courthouse in a million years can go on YouTube, put in Judge Joyce Draganchuk in your search box, and you'll find my YouTube channel. And I have saved every single one that I've done, every hearing. I haven't put them all on YouTube, but there's a small handful of ones I haven't for various reasons, but I've saved them all. So that's the other thing that a lot of people say don't do. You know, like, oh, delete them after you live stream them. Nah, I'm not concerned about the things that everyone is worried about. You know, they say, oh, they can monetize your channel. Like, seriously, I've got 120 followers or subscribers, maybe. I really don't think they're going to sell Coke with someone who has 120 YouTube subscribers. So I'm not terribly worried about it. I like it because it's like my body of work. And all of my criminal ones are up there, as well as my civil. So I was telling Sandy before we started that I'm told that this past summer, I think it was July 1st, I made a ruling on business interruption insurance with respect to COVID shutdowns. And several law firms have said that I was the first judge in the country to rule on that. And my YouTube hearing has gotten over 8,000 views. So it obviously attracted a lot of interest. And then since then, I've been given copies of federal court rulings where they have cited to my ruling on the business interruption and COVID shutdown. So, you know, I guess the point is that it not only allows, you know, any member of the public to virtually step into a courtroom, but it also allows, I'm sure a lot of those viewers were carriers. You know, it allow, and attorneys, you know, so it does allow, you know, people to see where you're going and what direction you're heading and how you analyze something for their own benefit, because maybe they have a similar case. And if you remember, that was one of the things when business court started in 2013. One of the benefits of it, or one of the goals, was predictability. And that's why, you know, the Supreme Court requires us to put all of our written opinions on their website for business court. Well, this is even better because I don't write out opinions for, you know, most of my motions for summary disposition. I rule from the bench. And so some of the other business court judges have always said to me, well, you're supposed to do a written opinion. And I'm like, no, I'm not supposed to do one. It's just when you do one, you have to post it. but you aren't required to do one. And I think that attorneys would rather have an immediate ruling from the bench than wait forever, however long it takes me to write out an opinion. But now they have my opinion on YouTube that they can watch. So, then I got just not too long ago, another business interruption insurance lawsuit with regard to COVID. And the attorney clearly had watched my ruling on the first one and tried to address some of the things that I had ruled and points that I had made in my ruling in order to save his case. I mean, it didn't work, but it has a great value, I think, to have all those rulings up there.
Yeah, what a great opportunity for an attorney to see at least where you're coming at with the issue and can address some of those issues. Yeah. Thank you so much. At this point in time, I would like to open it up for everybody else to ask questions. I thought I saw Mike Matheson maybe raising his hand to ask some questions. Or if you want to put questions in chat, I can read them off.
That was by mistake. I clicked a couple times. Sorry about that.
Well, now you got to come up with a question. So anybody at this point in time, you're able to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Sure, I'll jump in and ask one. Judge, how is the best way to get exhibits to you right now?
Well, it depends in what context. You mean
For motion hearings?
For motion hearings? Well, I still very much appreciate a hard copy of a judge's copy. Remember that even though we're taking the clerk's office is taking filings by email, we are not e-filing yet under the court rules. So you still are required to have a hard copy, a judge's copy. I mean, I guess that's the answer to my question to your question is that I still appreciate a judge's copy. Now, if it doesn't get to me in time, I do have the benefit now of being able to go into our computer system and see your filed document and pull it up and read it electronically. But that doesn't take the place of a hard copy that I still appreciate.
This is Steve Sinus. I just had a question about whether judges are thinking about accommodating lawyers to allow them to argue over Zoom, even after we get past the pandemic, if for some reason they need to, or for whatever reason, if that's going to be an available option for attorneys.
Yeah, that's something I thought about a lot. And I was just talking to an attorney about it on Zoom. And the thing is, will we go back to the way it was before, or will we take some of these things or all of these things and use them going forward? I think some of each for me. On my business court cases, I do require the attorneys to, quote, come in for that scheduling conference. And boy, has it been convenient just having them Zoom in. The ridiculousness of making an attorney drive from Farmington Hills, to have a 15-20 minute scheduling conference with me. It just makes so much more sense to do that on Zoom. And I think probably I'll continue that. But now when we get to motion practice, it's a little trickier, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, because as I was talking to this attorney the other day, we were both agreeing that you could still give attorneys the option of Zooming in for like a motion for summary disposition. But doesn't that sort of put you, the attorney, in a box? Because, I know, speaking for myself, I would not want to be on Zoom with the other attorney in person. So if you leave it as an option and let the attorneys decide what they want, you always have that problem. But I would not like to force someone to come in if they don't want to. And Zoom works perfectly for my civil cases. It's really fraught with issues on criminal, they're endless. And it's not just, I'm not talking about constitutional or statutory issues. I'm talking about just the logistics of it. It's horrible, I think. But But when it comes to criminal, I mean, when it comes to civil, it sure would be nice if people had the option to Zoom in for motion hearings. I just hate to put attorneys in that position where it's like, the other guy is there in person and he's gonna suck up to the judge and look better and be more effective and have that eye contact. And so I guess I gotta do it too.
Thank you.
From your perspective, have people been more or less effective when they argue motions via Zoom as opposed to being in person?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been just as effective. I really, on civil cases, I don't have an issue with it. Now, I would not want to do a bench trial via Zoom, and that is an option, but it's an option that I've not taken advantage of. I did 3 bench trials on my business court cases last summer. And I said to the attorneys, if you want, you can do it on Zoom. I'm not making anyone come in, or you can adjourn it. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I just want you to know I'm willing to do either one or either of the 3, in person, on Zoom, or adjourn it. And they said, no, we want to do it and we want to come in, but we're going to do it safely. There's only going to be a few of us in the courtroom at a time, plaintiff attorney, defendant's attorney, client, and witness. And, this was way last summer when things were going better. And so we did it and it was fine. I was glad they didn't say we want to do it on Zoom, because that would not be, I think, a good way to do a trial. But what was the question?
So the question was whether you felt attorneys were more or less effective when they argue motions via Zoom, or is it pretty much equivalent?
I think it's fine. They're just as effective. I have not had a problem with motion practice. I'm just saying I wouldn't do it for trials, but motion practice, it's been fine. And you all know me, so you know that I rely heavily on the briefing. And yes, I have a ruling prepared prior to your oral argument, but that I have made notes on and I'm prepared to deliver. However, that does not mean oral argument is useless. You have changed my mind. I have crossed things off. I've even changed the whole end result. But in any event, the briefing is very, very important. So that hasn't changed. And the Zoom oral argument, I think, is just as effective as the in-person oral argument. Not to say that I don't miss you all. I do. I mean, I would really much prefer that you would all be in the courtroom or be in chambers. We've had so many good conversations, and attorneys come for a 15-minute scheduling conference and we're in there for an hour talking about everything under the sun. I really enjoyed that and I miss it. But obviously for good reason, we can't do that. But effectiveness, not so much. It's not that. That's not the issue.
Yeah, the Court of Appeals recently sent out a survey asking attorneys about how they would feel about having the option for Zoom hearings beyond COVID. And it'd be interesting if maybe the circuit courts did that as well, or at least to find out what appellate attorneys thought about doing our oral argument via Zoom beyond. I can tell you, I was surprised at how I felt about it, because initially I did not like it. And now I've sort of come full circle because I can be in my own element and be so much more comfortable. Mm-hmm. But I still feel that connection with the judge and with the other attorney because you're right there with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just, as you mentioned, I'm the president of the MSU Ingham Court, and I was asked recently by the American Inns of Court, the national program, to participate in like a roundtable about professionalism, and it ended up being a conversation obviously about Zoom and doing things remotely, and but it all fell under the heading of professionalism, and it was attorneys and judges from around the country, and we all talked about how we missed that under the heading of professionalism, the contact, the relationships that you build up. Like, you know, maybe you have a scheduling conference and you chat with the judge about personal things for a while in chambers, or maybe after the hearing, after your motion, or probably before, because you ticked off after. But, you know, maybe you have a little, you know, like, hey, how you doing, judge? But I made the point, and I think, you know, I think as judges, we need to cultivate this, that you can still strive for that, even on Zoom. So what I do is, if I'm having a hearing on a motion on Zoom, and I you know, as I said, I live stream them on YouTube, but before I start the live stream, I get the attorneys into the hearing, and I make sure everybody's got audio and no one has any problems. And I use that time to be like, hey, how you doing? I miss you guys. You know, what's going on? How you doing? And we chat, and we have that. I mean, it's not the same as in person, but at least you know, the point that some of these attorneys were making in this roundtable was that you don't have that anymore. And my point was, but you can make time for that. You can strive for that, and it can still happen, but in a different way.
And I hope too, with the local bar associations and all of our local judges they're so amazing in participating with our local bar, but having these types of events can kind of replace some of that as well. So I'll shut up now. Does anybody else have any questions they want to ask of Judge Draganchuk?
Oh, come on.
There was a rumor going around that someone sewed a bunch of masks for the circuit court and staff at the beginning of the pandemic. Did you want to own up to any of that?
Yeah, I sewed, I think, 75 masks and handed them out to people. That was way back. Because I'm a quilter, anyone who's a quilter knows you have a fabric stash. So I have a whole armoire just stuffed with fabric. And it's all cotton fabric, perfect for mask making. So when things were really shut down last year, where you couldn't even shop, I thought perfect time to use up my fabric stash. So I made these masks for everyone. And then I made some fun ones for myself. I will not, we're recording, so I won't even demonstrate them. But I have my margarita mask and my turkey mask for Thanksgiving, and I had a couple other special occasion masks. My sommelier is asking if I need any more, and I don't. I'll start calling on people if you don't ask questions.
So I guess I kind of put myself on the spot by accidentally hitting raise hand previously. So I guess I better listen to Sandra and come up with a question. First, a statement. I would like to say the clerk's office has done a phenomenal job with the email processing of filings. Just to be able to switch gears like that seems like quite an undertaking. And I don't know who's responsible for that, but they've done a tremendous job. And for us lawyers, I know it's made things, once you get adjusted to it and kind of getting things right, it goes very seamlessly. And I think your staff as well has done a tremendous job with just kind of going on the fly with sort of, oh, I don't need a judge's copy for this, and it's making sure the checks get in for the motion filing fees, and I think just the entire court staff there has done a tremendous job. So I guess I'm going to flip that around slightly and ask a question of whether or not there's any sort of pet peeves or anything you see from us as practitioners in terms of our filings or things that we're doing that the message isn't getting through, that we could maybe even help these folks a little bit more with what they're having to take care of.
No, I mean, I don't really have any like complaints. I guess all I can do is stress again that I still need a judge's copy, but you know that that's my constant refrain. And now you know that I delivered those judges' copies to the judge when I was in high school in 1975. So now you know why they're so darn important to me, and I understand the importance of them. But anyway, no. But here's the funny thing, you know, back in the olden days before COVID, I don't know if the attorneys realize this, but I would frequently sign orders that would like recreate a paper that was filed, like recreating an order or recreating something, because the actual paper was lost by the clerk's office. And I don't mean to, you know, cast aspersions on the clerk's office, but, you know, they handle thousands and thousands of pieces of paper. And so you'd have to sign an order from time to time saying, you know, we're recreating this. This is the new filing that exactly replicates what was originally allegedly filed and lost. Okay, so now the other day I was working on a motion for reconsideration, and I wanted to go back and look at the original filings on the motion for summary disposition. And as I was going through the docket entries, I noticed that one of the response was missing. It was missing from the docket entries. And so I spoke to a supervisor in the clerk's office, and it was in fact not docketed. And if that goes to the Court of Appeals, if I hadn't noticed it, there would be no response in the file, in the electronic file from one of the parties. So the clerk's office found it. How did they find it? They went back through their email submissions because it was submitted by email. So like there's another wonderful advantage of this system. No longer do you have a lost piece of paper. If it was filed by email, then you can go back and find the email. So they then scanned it, or, you know, they downloaded it from the email and docketed it at the correct time that it was actually filed. And it's now correctly part of the docket entries. So yet another wonderful advantage of this new world that we find ourselves living in. Did I freeze again? No. Okay. I was watching ESPN once, and this guy, he was talking about a team and he couldn't remember one of the guys' names on the team. And so he pretended like his video froze while he thought about it. And I thought that was very, very clever. So now it's like, if no one moves, it's like, are you faking that you're frozen, or are you really frozen?
You know, I've got a Court of Appeals argument on Wednesday, and I may need to use that if I get a tough question.
I thought it was a great idea. Yep. Another advantage of this new technology.
Any other questions for Judge Draganchuk?
Just want to say thanks on behalf of Ingham County Bar. I know Sandy already thanked you, but we all thank you for your time tonight.
My pleasure. It's great to see all of you, or sort of see you. It's great to see all your black boxes with names.
All right. Well, if no one has any questions, I'll conclude for tonight. Thank you so much, Judge Draganchuk, for being here. I've learned lots of new things about you that I didn't know. This actually has been really fun. So we appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be coming around again to do another one of these sometime in the future.
Great. I'll look forward to it.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.